Welcome back to Pitso on SABC Lihaye. Every year on the 13th of February marks World Radio Day, with this year's theme titled Radio, a Century of Informing, Entertaining and Educating, to reflect on the last 100 years of radio broadcasting as well as the future of radio here at home and globally. Let's welcome Martin Vilakazi, who was formerly with Metro FM. Martin, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us on Pitso this morning.
No, thank you so much.
Let's start here. What is the significance of commemorating this day?
It's a very important event internationally where radio gets celebrated as a mass media that belongs to the poor. So radio is received by many people, especially in the African continent and other developing world. So we acknowledge the existence of radio, its origination, and celebrate its achievement over the years in changing people's lives.
And let's talk about radio in the South African context, because during apartheid it was used to spread propaganda, and then after the dawn of democracy it was used, as unifying the nation and also informing and educating. What role did radio play really after we got our democracy in South Africa in terms of uniting the nation?
I think the liberalization of the airwaves in South Africa brought about an important era in our democratic dispensation, where radio was truly used to uplift the oppressed, but also to give them the voice. But the most important thing is language diversity, promoting culture and language diversity and driving issues of democracy and human rights and access to different resources. But the most important thing for me, I think that it's an ownership. We've seen an emergence of over 300 comms radio stations from historically marginalized communities. These are people in grassroots communities that is owned and run by communities. You've seen the SABC that has transformed. You've seen commercial radio stations that are owned by people in the past that were not allowed because of their color. So we've seen this move through the policies that were created by the democratic order, by the formation of Independent Communications Authority. And then we've seen these things happening in the country. And I think there's more that radio can do in terms of driving people's participation in different areas of socioeconomy in South Africa.
Let's talk about community radio stations as well as campus radio stations, because they play a role in creating a platform or platforms for locals to engage on issues that matter to them, and also, giving young people an opportunity to work in the industry, giving them skills. But when we look at the infrastructure of these community radio stations, sometimes you sit and wonder and ask if they are really well funded. What is your take on the funding model of these community radio stations?
I think talking about funding model, you need to talk about broad funding model in terms of broadcasting in South Africa. You've got an SABC that is not clearly in terms of how it's funded now, and then it has to go to Treasury to get money. So clearly that's going to impact on community radio stations, which are typical community radio stations for non-profit. They are funded through opportunities created by government through MDDA and other funders that are proactive in the space, I think that there is more that can be done in terms of contributing towards funding of this community radio station, things like infrastructure, and things like training, which are more important, and operational cost, which is really, really a struggle because advertisers are not really, really interested in this type of stations because they are not, surveyed correctly, it's in diaries sometimes. So there is really a struggle. Campus radio station, you might say that they are much better in a position that they're located with academic institutions, but also they still need money for training and resources to be able to fulfill the mandate of building skills and capacity.
And when we look at nowadays, a lot of people have been complaining to say that radio stations these days prioritize influencers or celebrities or people that have, followings for them to be announcers or radio presenters. What is your take on this? And do you think this is sort of, it has a threat on the quality of the product of radio?
I think that everyone is allowed to become a radio anchor, but the most important thing is that basic skills are required, journalism skills because you're dealing with information, but also personality, passion for it. It's all fair and good where you've got influencers becoming, but the reality, this is a profession. Everyone is allowed, but the most important thing is that station needs to begin to unearth and develop talent. Fortunately for campus stations and other community radio stations, they are basic and their basics are taken care of. There's a good template in terms of talent development. And I think commercial and PBS stations needs to begin to look to that direction in terms of consistency, in terms of talent building. There is that opportunity to look at that, not just as on-air presenters, producers. I'm talking about 360, people behind the scene. So it's a cooking, it's a melting pot. So that's where things are happening. Yeah.
And radio, is it still relevant though? You know, there's social media these days where people can just go to social media, there's podcasts. So, but is traditional radio still relevant, or is it dying a slow death?
Never. To never die, to remain here. People rely on radio. Radio provides this intimacy in terms of one-on-one listening. But the reality about radio and access, particularly in Africa, it presents an opportunity for people to engage at no cost. Access to television currently is expensive because people are paying to be on digital TV. People pay data to access television, but radio still remains that. And I think it needs to diversify its opportunities by aligning itself with the evolution of digital technologies to amplify what they are currently doing in terms of content, distribution, in terms of alternative revenue stream, and develop new audiences beyond traditional radio listening platforms.
And let's talk about the music on radio, because back in the day, radio would introduce a lot of artists that are unknown, but these days it seems as if radio plays music that is playing on TikTok. What's your take on that?
Well, TikTok is it's citizen journalism. So TikTok, people generate music. So it's good for radio to go to this digital platform and look for content opportunities. So when you see an artist that is not recorded, but they're not playlisted, radio is supposed to do that. It's fortunate enough that now people don't have to drop CDs. People create their own platforms. So for radio stations, it's very important to go and add talent using digital platforms. So for me, if an artist is on TikTok and is not known, it makes sense. I mean, it's called citizen journalism, and people are creating their own content. And I think radio needs to find a balance by getting listeners to engage with them, by identifying creative ways, by unearthing content opportunities available on these platforms. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Martin Vilakazi, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much for hosting me.
Today, a group of unemployed medical doctors are gathered in Bisho, Eastern Cape Province, preparing a march to the Premier's office. For more on this, let's welcome an unemployed medical doctor who is at the march. His name is Dr. Thapelo Molozi. Thapelo, welcome to Pitso on SABC Lihaye. Perhaps just remind us, before you embarked on this protest, were you able to communicate with the Department of Health? If so, what did you say to them and what was their response? Thapelo, please unmute yourself because we are struggling to pick up your sound. Thapelo, can you hear me? I cannot hear you. Please unmute yourself. Thapelo, can you hear me now?
Am I not audible?
Now I can hear you. Yes, please go ahead. I can hear you.
Oh, yes. We're a group of medical doctors who are unemployed in the Eastern Cape. Some of us since the 1st of January, and some of us, it has been close to a year. There has been several attempts to communicate with the Department of Health in the province to try and get answers as to what is happening, as to when possible is it that we could get our the placements in those underserved communities in rural areas and in all hospitals, of course, in the province. However, attempts to reach out to the province, the Provincial Department of Health, to reach out to the Premier's office have been futile to this length. Our representatives in Samatu had promised us that they are trying to do something. They are trying to communicate with the Department of Health. They are trying to communicate with the acting HOD. They are trying to communicate with the Premier's office. However, to date, we have not received a communique as to what is transpiring in terms of their attempts. So as Eastern unemployed doctors, we took it upon ourselves to come to the Premier's office to demand answers, because what we know is that people at home, people in hospitals are queuing for long hours. Some, they go to hospital and only sit there to be seen after 2 days. Our colleagues in hospitals are suffering because there is a high burden of patients, and they are subsequently, they are suffering from issues of burnout and burnout-related problems.
And what other support are you receiving from other stakeholders? Is there any other organization or maybe a group of people that are supporting you in this cry that you have?
We've got a group of employed doctors that are with us. However, in terms of formal structures such as trade unions, we don't have any trade union currently that is in support of our strike. At the last hour, last night, Samatu turned a blind eye, and in fact, they said, they wrote to the deputy minister that they are not part of this strike. And so far as unemployed doctors, we've taken the decision to say we will forge on with our struggle with or without our trade union. Because you must understand that Samatu so far is the only trade union that is recognized that represents only doctors. However, there are other options of other unions that do represent healthcare workers in general. But however, to this land, we don't have confirmation from other formal structures. It's just us, unemployed doctors in the Eastern Cape and other doctors who are employed in the Eastern Cape, who are feeling the burden of patients that are flooding in hospitals and in clinics.
And, one can imagine what you're going through emotionally or mentally. A group of doctors, you went to school, you studied for this, and then you're expecting to be employed. Take us through your emotional well-being as a group of doctors during this difficult time.
The only support we're having emotionally right now is ourselves. To be honest, to have sacrificed so much time going to school, to study such a difficult career, having gone through medical school, having gone through internship and community service, and then to be told, in fact, we are not even told that we are not going to be employed. We just found from social media, we found from circular that on WhatsApp. So it has taken a huge toll on us, especially knowing that our colleagues in hospitals are not coping with the burden of patients that they are facing, especially knowing that there are clinics that do not have doctors, especially if we know that there are situations whereby there would be a patient who needs immediate care that cannot be attended to immediately because of the shortage of the number of doctors in our hospitals.
And, I'm surely there are some doctors who are now willing to go overseas to, seek for employment. Is it the same situation in your group of doctors that are looking for employment?
There has been attempt by certain agencies from abroad to try and recruit us to go serve abroad. However, we as Eastern Cape doctors, majority of us who come from rural areas, who come from townships and peri-urban areas, we feel that we owe a lot to our people, because more especially that the majority of us are bursary holders. You must understand that the bursary contract of the Eastern Cape is called a social compact agreement, because upon selection, majority of us were selected by members of the Department of Health, by members of sister departments, by members of traditional leaders in the communities. So, and when during recruitment, we were told that it is our duty to come back to this province and fill in the gaps where there are multiple gaps. Eastern Cape is one of those provinces that is suffering hugely from litigations because of mistakes that occur in hospitals, because of the lack of doctors. Because if one doctor is expected to do the job of 3 doctors, then obviously there are expected mistakes that are going to happen, and subsequently the government will spend a lot of money on litigations. So up until the 31st of December, it was of our knowledge that the Department of Health has the duty to absorb us and employ us into these underserved communities in rural and peri-urban areas.
Now you want to, you are attempting to meet up with the Department of Health in the Eastern Cape province. And what happens if all fails? What will be your next step if they don't give you the answers you're looking for?
We are going to give the Premier and the Department of Health our memorandum of demands, of which we are going to give them a period of 10 days to respond, upon which, if there is no response or no satisfactory response, then we'll be back here in the provincial offices to embark on a strike again.
All right. Thapelo, thank you so much for your time, and we wish you all the best in your march today, and we hope that, your concerns will be attended to.
Thank you very much. Thank you to viewers.
All right, that was Dr. Thapelo Mulutsi, who is an unemployed doctor, currently talking to us from Bisha, where a group of them, unemployed doctors, are marching to the Premier's office. All they are demanding is for them to be employed because they are qualified. They want to give services to their people of the Eastern Cape province, but up to this date, they have not received any employment letter. For now, let us go to a break, and Pitso will continue after this.